There is a moment in every woman's life when she becomes tired. Tired of chasing, tired of proving, tired of giving more than she receives. Tired of watering relationships where her presence is taken for granted. And yet, beneath all that exhaustion, there remains a quiet, unbreakable hope. The hope to be seen, to be valued, to be chosen. Not for perfection or performance, but for the truth of who she is. This hope is not weakness. It is the heartbeat of the feminine spirit. It's the voice inside that whispers, I was made for a love that recognizes me. For years, society has conditioned women to believe that the way to be chosen is through effort, to be impressive, to try harder, to show that they are different from the others, to give more, sacrifice more, be more available, more patient, more forgiving, even when their hearts are breaking. The tragic irony is that the more a woman tries to prove her worth, the more invisible she becomes, because something deep in the masculine psyche cannot be awakened by effort. It is awakened by presence. And this is where the secret begins. Walter Rizzo, after decades studying the most successful and emotionally powerful relationships, discovered something radical. The women who are truly chosen are the ones who do not chase love. They embody it. They carry a magnetic presence that needs no explanation. They are not loud. They are not demanding. They are not perfect. They are simply rooted in themselves, whole, present, alive. Men feel this instantly, in a way they cannot explain. It bypasses logic and reaches deep into instinct. It is like standing in front of a flame. You cannot help but feel drawn toward its warmth. This presence is not created to attract a man. It is born from a woman returning to herself. And that return is the beginning of everything. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds of modern psychology, once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Most women never experience this privilege because they have spent so much of their lives trying to become who someone else wanted them to be. A daughter shaped by expectations, a partner shaped by fear, a friend shaped by comparison, a woman shaped by the belief that she is never enough. But the truth is revolutionary. The moment a woman stops trying to be chosen, she becomes irresistible. Because a woman who no longer fears being alone radiates a different kind of energy. She listens differently. She speaks differently. She moves through the world with a quiet certainty that cannot be faked. She stops apologizing for her emotions. She stops shrinking to make others comfortable. She stops negotiating her worth. She becomes present with herself. And the world feels that presence like gravity. And here lies the deeper truth. The feminine is not magnetic because it tries. It is magnetic because it is. It is the energy of flow, of intuition, of softness that is strong enough to hold storms. It is vulnerability without collapse. It is gentleness without weakness. It is the power of authenticity. Men do not fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with truth, with soul, with depth, with the woman who dares to show herself fully. Jung also said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart." And this is precisely what most women have forgotten to do. They look outward, searching for validation, chasing affection, waiting for a man to confirm that they are worthy of love. They forget that the heart they are waiting to be chosen by must be their own first. Everything begins when a woman chooses herself. That choice is not loud. It does not come with fireworks. It comes quietly like the first sunrise after a long winter. It is the moment she says, "I will no longer abandon myself." When she decides to stop pouring into others until she's empty. When she chooses peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, alignment over desperation. And from that moment, everything changes. Because nothing is more magnetic to a man than a woman who is emotionally independent. A woman who is full without needing to cling. A woman who desires but does not chase. A woman who loves deeply without losing herself. Her energy communicates something powerful. I am complete. And if I choose you, it is because I want you, not because I need you. That difference awakens something primal in the male psyche. It shifts the balance completely. The man no longer feels pressure. He feels purpose. He is no longer afraid of failing her. He is inspired to rise for her. He no longer takes her for granted. He recognizes her rarity. Attraction turns into admiration. Admiration turns into respect. respect turns into devotion. And that is the essence of true feminine magnetism. Carl Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The women who are chosen are the ones who bring transformation into a man's life. Not through demand, but through presence. Not through performance, but through authenticity. Not through chasing, but through self-connection. Men do not commit because a woman is perfect. They commit because she awakens a better version of them. She reminds him of what it means to love with depth. She inspires him to become the man he always wanted to be. She brings peace where others brought pressure. She brings softness where others brought struggle. She brings clarity where others brought confusion. This is the kind of woman a man chooses without hesitation. The kind of woman he cannot forget. The kind of woman who becomes the exception in a world full of competition. And now, the sacred journey begins. The journey back to yourself. The journey of surrender. Not to a man, but to your own truth. The journey of releasing control, releasing fear, releasing the need to hustle for love. The journey of returning to the woman you were born to be, before the world taught you to doubt her, because when you return to her, the world returns to you. The journey back to yourself begins with a question many women fear to ask. Who am I when I am not trying to be chosen? For most, the answer feels terrifying, because they have spent years defining themselves through the eyes of others. Approval became oxygen. Validation became nourishment. Love became currency. And somewhere along the way, they internalized the belief that without someone choosing them, they were incomplete. But here is the liberating truth. The most magnetic women in the world did not become magnetic by being chosen. They became magnetic when they realized they could choose themselves. When they discovered that their worth is not a negotiation. When they understood that they are already whole. When they stopped asking for permission to exist fully. This transformation is not loud. It happens quietly, internally, at the level of identity. A moment arrives when the pain of self-abandonment becomes heavier than the fear of losing someone. A moment when your heart whispers enough. And if you listen closely, you hear a deeper voice beneath the noise. A voice that has been waiting patiently for years. The voice of your true self. Returning to this voice is the essence of feminine magnetism. Because when a woman reconnects with who she truly is, she begins to radiate a frequency that cannot be imitated. A frequency that calls forth love without asking for it. A frequency that tells the world, I am here and I am enough. This internal shift creates an external transformation. Suddenly, the woman who used to chase becomes still. The woman who used to overthink becomes peaceful. The woman who used to fear abandonment becomes anchored in herself. She stops checking her phone every minute. She stops worrying about why he hasn't called. She stops rehearsing conversations in her mind. She stops waiting for someone to choose her. She begins choosing her own joy, her own peace, her own growth. And as she returns to herself, something extraordinary begins to happen. Men sense the shift. They feel the difference in her energy before she speaks a word. A woman anchored in herself has a way of looking at the world that is calm and unwavering. She carries herself differently, not with arrogance, but with a soft certainty. She listens without needing to be right. She speaks without needing to convince. She loves without needing to possess. She lets life unfold rather than forcing outcomes. This is what awakens the masculine instinct to pursue. Not games, not manipulation, not scarcity or silence used as a weapon, but the presence of a woman who knows that love is not something she needs to fight for. A woman who is not afraid to walk away from what does not nourish her. A woman who is willing to lose someone else before she loses herself. Most women lose their power the moment they fear loss. They cling. They negotiate. They compromise their needs. They silence their voice. They tolerate disrespect. They shrink so someone else can grow. They abandon themselves so someone else will stay. But what they don't realize is that the moment they betray themselves, they become energetically invisible. Men don't choose the woman who sacrifices her soul for them. They choose the woman who chooses herself. This is not selfishness. This is emotional maturity. Emotional independence means you can love deeply without collapsing into another person. It means you can give without losing yourself. It means you can receive without guilt. It means you can be vulnerable without drowning in fear. It means you can walk away when something is no longer aligned, not out of anger, but out of truth. When a woman reaches this state, she no longer asks, "Does he like me?" She asks, "Do I feel at peace with him? Do I feel safe? Do I feel seen? Do I feel valued?" She no longer falls in love with potential. She no longer tries to fix or save or convince. She waits for alignment. She waits for reciprocity. She waits for consistency, not because she is passive, but because she is wise. This wisdom is magnetic. Men admire a woman who holds standards, not from pride, but from self-respect. A man knows instantly when he is in the presence of such a woman. Her presence challenges him, not through pressure, but through inspiration. He feels compelled to rise, to become better, to prove himself not through words, but through actions. He wants to earn her trust. He wants to be worthy of her love. He wants to protect what is sacred because he senses that her love is rare. And that is the quiet power of the feminine. She does not demand devotion. She inspires it. She does not chase commitment. She evokes it. She does not beg to be chosen. She becomes the only choice. When a woman fully embodies this inner transformation, she stops being afraid of losing the wrong man. She realizes that if someone leaves, they were never meant to stay. If someone cannot meet her at her level, they were never her match. If someone is intimidated by her light, they were never ready for her. This is the moment she steps into her true power. She stops trying to control outcomes and begins to trust timing. She stops trying to predict the future and begins to ground herself in the present. She stops trying to force love and begins to let it flow. She realizes that love meant for her does not require effort. It arrives with clarity. She understands that the right man does not bring confusion and anxiety. He brings certainty and peace. And that certainty is what separates magnetic women from the rest. People often assume that magnetic women are fearless, but the truth is different. Magnetic women feel fear just like everyone else. They just do not bow to it. They walk through it. They trust themselves more than they trust their fear. They have learned that the only thing more painful than losing someone else is losing themselves. So they choose courage. They choose authenticity. They choose surrender, not to a man, but to life. They surrender the illusion of control. They surrender the need to know the outcome. They surrender the past that once wounded them. They surrender the story that said they were not enough. They surrender everything that does not align with the truth of who they are becoming. In that surrender, they are reborn, and as they rise, the world rises to meet them. When a woman begins this journey back to her true self, the world around her shifts in ways that feel almost mystical. Suddenly, patterns that once repeated themselves end. Situations that once drained her dissolve. People who once took advantage of her either rise to meet her or fall away completely. It can feel unsettling at first, because the familiar disappears, even if the familiar was painful. But this letting go is essential, because self-reclamation requires space. A woman cannot step into her new identity while holding tightly to her old wounds. The first sign that she is transforming is silence. Not the silence of punishment or withdrawal, but the silence of inner clarity. The silence that comes when she no longer needs to defend or explain herself. The silence that replaces anxiety. The silence that carries power. The silence that says, "I trust myself, and therefore I do not need to convince anyone of anything." This silence is magnetic. Men feel it immediately. It is the energy of grounded certainty, and it is rare. The second sign is emotional neutrality. Not coldness, not indifference, but balance. She no longer swings wildly between hope and disappointment. She no longer needs constant reassurance. She no longer reacts impulsively. She responds with intention. She pauses before speaking. She breathes before deciding. She watches instead of assuming. She knows that the truth of a man is not in his words, but in his consistency. So she observes, not with suspicion, but with wisdom. And this quiet discernment reveals everything. The third sign is boundaries. Boundaries not expressed through anger or threats, but through standards, through actions, through what she allows and what she walks away from. A woman in her power no longer fears losing someone by saying no. She knows that any relationship that collapses, because she honored herself, was never safe to stand on. A woman with boundaries is not difficult. She is clear, and clarity is profoundly attractive. As she continues this journey, something extraordinary happens internally. She begins to feel a growing sense of peace in her own body. The tension she carried for years melts. The anxiety in her chest loosens. The constant overthinking grows quiet. She stops seeking signs outside herself. She begins to trust her intuition. Again, that ancient compass that women are born with but often taught to ignore. She stops trying to predict outcomes and begins to let life unfold. She stops living in fear and begins living in flow. She stops surviving love and begins experiencing it. This internal peace is the essence of feminine radiance. It glows through her skin. It softens her voice. It illuminates her eyes. It transforms the space around her. It is not makeup or fashion or beauty rituals, though those become expressions of her joy. It is the energy of someone who belongs to herself. And this energy cannot be imitated. It cannot be faked. It cannot be copied. It can only be embodied. When a woman reaches this state, the masculine instinct awakens on a primal level. Men feel drawn toward her, not because she seeks attention, but because she does not need it. She becomes the paradox men are wired to pursue, available yet whole, open yet sovereign, soft yet powerful, loving yet unattached. She communicates without effort, simply through the energy she carries. She does not chase. She does not persuade. She does not compete. She simply exists in her fullness, and that fullness is enough. In the presence of such a woman, something shifts inside a man. He feels a desire to protect, to support, to bring his best self forward, not because she demands it, but because he senses that she values herself too much to accept anything less. He feels an internal pull to rise, to grow, to become more. He sees in her a reflection of the man he could be at his highest level, and he knows that if he wants to stand next to her, he must stand tall. A woman in her power does not ask a man to change. She inspires change simply by being who she is. This is the kind of woman a man thinks about even when she is not there. The kind of woman he compares all others to. The kind of woman he cannot replace. The kind of woman whose absence is louder than anyone else's presence. A woman like this does not wait for a man to realize her worth. He realizes it instinctively. He recognizes that if he loses her, he loses something sacred. So he steps forward. He chooses. He commits. He acts with intention. Because he knows that indecision would cost him everything. And yet, something deeper begins to happen within the woman herself, a rebirth. She starts to feel safe inside her own skin. She starts to enjoy her own company. She begins to build a life she loves, independent of anyone else's presence. She invests in her passions again. She nurtures friendships that elevate her. She moves her body with joy instead of punishment. She creates rituals that connect her to her inner world. She begins to glow from within. Her joy is no longer dependent on someone's affection. Her peace is no longer conditional. Her identity is no longer fragile. She becomes a woman who loves because she is full, not because she is empty. A woman who gives because she wants to, not because she is afraid to lose. A woman who chooses a partner from abundance, not from fear. In this state, love becomes something entirely different. Love is no longer a battlefield where she must fight to be seen. Love is no longer a negotiation. Love is no longer a punishment she must earn through sacrifice. Love becomes freedom. It becomes expansion. It becomes a space where both hearts grow, instead of one shrinking to fit inside the other. Love becomes partnership, not possession. A woman who rises into this identity attracts a completely different kind of man. Not the emotionally unavailable type, not the inconsistent type, not the one who loves the chase more than the relationship. She attracts a man who cherishes connection, a man who values depth, a man who is willing to do the work, a man who recognizes that love is not a game, it is a responsibility. And when these two energies meet, a woman rooted in herself and a man ready to rise, something rare is born. A love that heals instead of wounds. A love that expands instead of limits. A love that feels safe instead of chaotic. A love that feels destined, not demanded. A love that grows stronger with time rather than fading. This is the kind of love every woman deserves. It begins not by finding him, but by finding herself. Because the moment she returns to her truth, something divine aligns. Life begins to work in her favor. Opportunities find her. Blessings flow to her. Relationships elevate her. Love recognizes her. And the right man will not be intimidated by her power. He will be in awe of it. As the woman continues to rise into her true essence, the outer world begins to shift in unmistakable ways. It starts subtly. A stranger holds the door for her. Someone smiles at her in the street and she feels warmth, not discomfort. Conversations become richer. Opportunities appear where before there were none. People begin treating her differently. Not because they changed, but because her energy did. The world always mirrors a woman's internal state. Suddenly, the dynamics in her relationships shift. The man who once took her for granted pauses. Something about her presence feels different, calmer, more self-contained, more mysterious. The predictability is gone. She is no longer waiting for his attention or contorting her schedule around his availability. She has a life again, a full and vibrant life that does not revolve around him. And this shift unsettles him in ways he cannot articulate. He senses that if he does not step forward, he may lose her. Not because she is playing games, but because she is no longer afraid to walk away. She no longer fills silence with nervous explanations. She no longer asks questions she already knows the answer to. She no longer tries to prove her value. She lets things reveal themselves. The man is now faced with a choice he never had to make before. To rise or to let go. Whether he chooses her or not does not weaken her. The decision simply reveals who he is. This clarity is powerful. It filters, it sorts, it removes illusion. She stops confusing attachment with love. She understands that someone who gives inconsistency gives pain, not affection. In the past, she would have held on, hoping he would change. Now she steps back, allowing him to show what he is truly capable of. If he steps forward with intention, she receives him with openness. If he pulls away, she lets him go with grace. Not because she is indifferent, but because she respects herself too deeply to remain where her heart is not cherished. And something else begins to unfold, a newfound confidence that radiates from within. She stops apologizing for her desires. She stops minimizing her needs. She stops shrinking her dreams. She no longer hides her standards. To avoid being judged as too much, she realizes she was never too much. She was simply with people who wanted too little. As she becomes emotionally independent, she begins to notice a profound transformation in the men she attracts. Men who sense her worth instinctively. Men who are drawn to her strength, not threatened by it. Men who admire her softness and her boundaries. Men who see her not as an accessory but as a partner. Not as a prize to win but as a treasure to protect. These are men who show up. Not with empty promises but with consistent actions. Not with intensity that burns quickly and dies, but with steady devotion that grows stronger with time. And for the first time in her life, she realizes that love does not have to feel like chaos. Love can be peaceful. Love can be quiet. Love can be safe. Love can be deep without being dramatic. She begins to experience a new emotional landscape, a place where she is loved not because she performs, but because she exists. Yet the transformation also brings discomfort. Old attachments try to return. People from her past reappear, drawn to her new energy. The ex who once ignored her messages now sends long paragraphs. The emotionally unavailable man suddenly becomes poetic. The man who thought she would always wait now feels urgency rising like panic. But she sees clearly now. She does not fall for nostalgia. She does not fall for words without actions. She does not fall for promises without proof. She looks at them through new eyes and realizes something painful and beautiful. She has outgrown them. Growth means letting go, even of what once felt unforgettable. This letting go creates space. Space for peace. Space for alignment. Space for real love. Space to receive what is worthy of her. Because she now understands something sacred. Not everyone deserves access to her heart. Not everyone deserves to witness her softness. Not everyone deserves the privilege of her loyalty. Not everyone deserves to walk beside her. She becomes highly selective, not from arrogance, but from self-respect. The men who once impressed her with charm now feel small. The men who once intimidated her now feel ordinary. The men who once confused her no longer have access to her time. Confusion is replaced with clarity. Fear is replaced with faith. Desperation is replaced with patience. She no longer fears being alone. In fact, she begins to enjoy solitude. She finds comfort in her own company. She sits in silence and feels at home. She learns to listen to the whispers inside her soul, whispers she ignored for years because she was too busy chasing noise. Outside herself, that inner voice becomes her guide, her compass, her anchor. She learns to trust timing. She learns to trust that what is meant for her cannot be taken. She learns to trust that life supports her. She learns to trust her intuition, the truth that always lived beneath doubt. She realizes that love is abundant, not scarce. She realizes that the right connection does not require force. She realizes that rejection is redirection, not failure. She realizes that everything she lost was preparing space for everything she is about to gain. And as this trust grows, the feminine energy inside her begins to bloom. She laughs more often. She smiles without reason. She moves with ease. She feels light. She wakes up with gratitude instead of anxiety. She sleeps peacefully. Her body relaxes. Her heart expands. She no longer waits for permission to feel joy. She becomes radiant. The world responds like gravity to that radiance. People want to be around her. They want to listen when she speaks. They want to understand her depth. They feel safe in her presence. She becomes a lighthouse, guiding without trying, shining without effort. Men especially feel the pull of this light. It awakens something ancient within them. The instinct to cherish, to protect, to commit. The right man does not feel intimidated by her strength. He feels honored to stand beside her. He recognizes that loving her is a privilege, not a burden. He knows that if he wants to be part of her world, he must show up fully. He cannot hide. He cannot pretend. He cannot stay half alive. Her presence calls forth his highest self. In her presence, he sees his future, not in fantasy, but in clarity. He sees the life they could build together. He sees the kind of love that grows rather than depletes. He feels a certainty he has never felt before, that she is the woman he wants to choose and choose every day, because he knows that women like her do not wait. They do not settle. They do not chase. They do not negotiate their worth. They are not desperate for love. They are love. And now everything prepares her for the final step, the moment where she embodies the highest expression of feminine power, surrender without fear. Surrender is one of the most misunderstood words in the modern world. Many people hear the word and think of weakness, giving up, or losing control. But true surrender is the opposite. True surrender is the ultimate act of power. It is the moment when a woman trusts herself so deeply that she no longer needs to cling, control, chase, or fear. It is the moment when she releases everything that is not aligned with the truth inside her. It is the moment she opens her heart without abandoning herself. Surrender is not falling to the ground. Surrender is rising into the sky. And this is the final sacred step of the transformation, the step that changes everything. When a woman surrenders to her true nature, she stops forcing life. She stops trying to push love uphill. She stops fighting for a place in someone's life. She realizes that anything she has to beg for will never be safe to receive. She understands that what is meant for her comes with clarity, not confusion. She lets go of outcomes, not because she doesn't care, but because she finally understands that she is held by something greater than fear. This surrender is emotional freedom. It is the release of control. It is the trust that love will find her because she is ready to be found. It is the awareness that holding on tightly has never created security. It has only created suffering. She learns that love cannot be forced into existence. It must be allowed to bloom. She stops asking, "Where is he? Why isn't he choosing me? Why didn't it work?" And begins asking a different question. What is life preparing me for? Because now she understands something profoundly beautiful. Every delay has purpose. Every ending has direction. Every heartbreak was a doorway, shaping her into the woman she was always meant to become. She is no longer afraid of loss. Loss has already carved her open and made space for wisdom. She has already survived the pain she once feared. She has already risen from places that once felt impossible to escape. She knows now that nothing she loses diminishes her. It refines her. She understands that surrender is not waiting passively. Surrender is choosing actively, choosing alignment, choosing peace, choosing her future instead of protecting her past. Surrender is the moment she stops bargaining with destiny and begins trusting the divine timing she once fought against. And this trust changes everything. She begins saying yes to new experiences. She begins allowing joy to return. She stops expecting disappointment and begins expecting beauty. She stops anticipating abandonment and begins anticipating connection. She stops believing she must be perfect to be loved and begins believing she is already enough. She stops living in survival mode and begins living in creation mode. For the first time, she feels free, not because everything outside her changed, but because everything inside her did. This freedom is irresistible. It is magnetic. It is the essence of feminine power. The woman who reaches this state does not chase anything. She simply attracts. She does not plead. She receives. She does not fear endings. She welcomes beginnings. She does not demand love. She becomes love. This is the woman a man chooses without hesitation. The woman who stands in her light, knowing that she is whole, knowing that she is sacred, knowing that she deserves devotion, not attention. She does not need to be chosen. She is chosen because she chooses herself. In the presence of such a woman, everything false falls away. Men who are unprepared collapse. Men who are afraid retreat. Men who want convenience disappear. But men who are ready, they rise. They meet her with intentionality. They approach with clarity. They speak with honesty. They act with consistency. They love with presence. The right man is not intimidated by her strength. He is inspired by it. He does not see her independence as a threat. He sees it as an honor. He does not compete with her power. He protects it. He does not ask her to shrink. He stands beside her as she expands. He does not love her because he needs her. He loves her because he chooses her. Because he knows that a woman like her does not come twice in a lifetime. With this man, love becomes a sanctuary. It becomes a place where two souls meet in truth, not in fear. A place where both people feel safe to be fully themselves. A place where growth is shared. A place where intimacy is spiritual, not just emotional or physical. A place where love does not imprison, but liberates. They do not hold each other tightly out of fear of losing. They hold each other gently out of joy in staying. They do not promise forever through words. They prove forever through actions. They do not bond through pain. They bond through purpose. They do not take love for granted. They cultivate it daily like a sacred garden. And the woman realizes something extraordinary. This is the love she was always worthy of. Not the love she begged for. Not the love she chased. Not the love she tried to earn through sacrifice. But the love that found her when she stopped trying to be chosen and became the chooser of her own destiny. Her surrender was not about giving up. It was about rising beyond the fear that once controlled her. It was about trusting that she is already enough. It was about remembering who she was before she forgot her own worth. It was about returning home to herself. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Now she understands those words deeply. She sees that every time she abandoned herself, she called it love. Every time she tolerated disrespect, she called it loyalty. Every time she stayed in pain, she called it strength. Now she knows the truth. Love does not require self-betrayal. Love does not demand silence. Love does not require shrinking. Love does not hurt endlessly. Love heals. A woman who has taken this journey is no longer afraid of being alone, because she has discovered the most important relationship she will ever have, the relationship with herself. She knows her value. She knows her light. She knows her power. She knows her heart. She knows what she brings. She knows what she will never again accept. And she knows that when the right man arrives, he will not need to be convinced. He will already know, because real love does not hesitate. Real love does not confuse. Real love does not disappear. Real love stands steady and clear. A woman who chooses herself becomes impossible to forget. She becomes unforgettable because she is free. She is radiant. She is whole. She is the woman who no longer pleads to be chosen. She is the woman who is chosen. She is the lighthouse. She is the flame. She is the sunrise after a long night. She is the woman who loves without losing herself. And when she finally opens her heart, not from desperation, but from abundance, love enters with reverence. This is the moment everything in her life transforms. And now her story begins.